Okay, all right. Good morning, everybody. And I am just going to just do a little bit of housekeeping here, just so that everybody is on the same page. Um, I'm Jackie Messer-LePage. I'm the Executive Director and Registrar for the College of Paramedics. I am going to turn the meeting over to Kyle to do a welcome and introduction. But before that, I'll just let you all know that all of your microphones are muted at this point, and that's just so that we can manage the volume of individuals on the webinar. We appreciate all of you taking the time to join us today. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat function. I'm just going to turn it over to Kyle now, Kyle Serrata, who is our president, and he will start the meeting.
Thank you, Jackie, and I got it right so far, so I'm not on mute to begin, so we're golden. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics Annual General Meeting for 2021. And I'd like to say it's not a coincidence that it is on May the 4th, a Star Wars holiday, but I won't mention that yet. I'll wait for the end. First and foremost, we hope everyone here today is doing well, as much as those that cannot attend, healthy, safe during these challenging pandemic times that we still find ourselves in. Paramedics contribute in the healthcare system quite significantly during these times of public health and safety, and the role they play is critical. And the college recognizes that and works to support the profession to protect the public in its role, as well as support its members. So we do appreciate everyone in attendance here today who have taken their time out of very busy schedules, no doubt, as well as our special guests here today. Paramedics in attendance, council, and even a little bit of motivational entertainment near the end of our day. So we do thank you for your attendance. We hope you find today's meeting and discussions valuable as we part near noon, I believe, is our expected time of completion. So welcome again. I would first like to begin by acknowledging that we are on traditional lands referred to as Treaty 4 territory, and that the city of Regina, Moose Jaw, Swift Current, Maple Creek, Yorkton, and Melville is located on Treaty 4 territory. The original lands of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect and honor the treaties that were made on all territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we are committed to move forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. It brings me great pleasure to introduce our first guest today, Minister Everett Hindley, who was elected MLA for Swift Current on March 1st, 2018. Everett grew up on a family farm near Melfort and is the oldest of 4 children. In late 1995, he graduated from Western Academy Broadcasting College in Saskatoon and then moved to Swift Current the following year. Everett was the morning news anchor and news director for the local radio stations for 3.5 years and the color commentator for Swift Current Broncos hockey broadcasts. In October of 1999, Everett began working for the newly elected MLA Brad Wall and his constituency as his constituency assistant. He managed the local MLA office until the spring of 2006, when he then became the executive assistant to the leader of the opposition. Upon the Saskatchewan Party's election as government in 2007, Everett served as the executive assistant to the premier. During his 18 years of public service, Everett has been responsible for helping coordinate the former Premier's itinerary, staffing many meetings and events, and has been part of several international trade missions to promote Swift Current and Saskatchewan's interest. Everett joined the cabinet as Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Seniors and Rural Remote Health. He previously served on House Services, Privileges, and Crown and Central Services committees as government whip. Everett and his wife Anita have 2 grown children and are proud grandparents. Brings me great pleasure to introduce the Honourable Minister Everett Hindley.
Did I lose
There we
you?
go. Did I have to unmute? Am I coming through?
You're good.
There we go. Thanks very much. Thanks, Kyle, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for allowing me the opportunity to join you virtually today. It's still weird saying that, even though we're over a year into this. But looking forward to the opportunity when we're able to do these in person once again. But again, thanks again for the opportunity to be here on behalf of the Government of Saskatchewan. My colleague, the Minister of Health, Paul Merriman, and I would like to thank the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics and its memberships for its hard work, your dedication in responding to everything that's been thrown at you throughout this pandemic over the last year or so. Your work has truly been invaluable to the entire healthcare system, and especially to our patients. We know that this past year has been extremely challenging for all frontline providers, and from the constant donning and doffing of PPE to the evolution of the knowledge about the virus and changes in practice as a result, paramedics have continued to deliver high quality care and compassion throughout this pandemic. Paramedics have been a valuable asset on the front lines in the healthcare system's response to the pandemic. We've seen paramedics, and I know of some in my home community, have been providing supports to their communities, assisting in long-term care homes during outbreaks, as an example. The willingness of the paramedics profession to assist during providing testing and vaccine rollout has been of tremendous help to our healthcare system's response. And we thank you for your incredible efforts during this time. Health system challenges will always change and evolve, but this year has truly been unprecedented for all of us. And we thank the college for their work with the Ministry of Health and the Saskatchewan Health Authority to be able to provide and to respond to the evolving nature throughout this pandemic. The issuing of emergency licenses, reinstatement of providers, and scope of practice changes have ensured that patients and the public continue to receive the best possible care during these truly unprecedented times. And despite this year's challenges, the college has continued to advance clinical opportunities, provide national exams, and implement a new registry system for your members. It's important to recognize those achievements. Paramedics are valued members of our healthcare system, work behind delivering high educational standards and building competencies for each licensing level, from emergency medical responders to advanced care and critical care paramedics, must continue to be a priority. And I'd encourage our health system partners to continue that work together. Through collaboration and communication, you're maintaining and also enhancing paramedic practice across Saskatchewan. I'm pleased that in the 2021-22 provincial budget, commitments added up to an overall investment in emergency medical services of nearly $15 million. The government will provide $6.6 million increase for needed improvements to EMS in Saskatchewan. These initiatives include staffing additional ambulances in Regina and Saskatoon, addressing delays and transferring patients to hospitals and other facilities, covering patient wait time fees, and funding new ambulance technology, including the installation of automated vehicle location and GPS to improve service coordination and protect Saskatchewan residents. An additional $6.7 million will also fulfill a commitment to benefit Saskatchewan's senior citizens by significantly reducing ambulance fees from $275 per trip to $135 per trip. The investment also eliminates the interfacility transfer charges for seniors as well. There will also be an additional $1.4 million for STARS to add a helicopter to the fleet and meet increased operating costs in that area. This week as well also puts mental health in the spotlight. It is Mental Health Week. We know this past year has indeed been a strain for the mental well-being of healthcare providers, and paramedics are no exception to that. You're often the first person to respond to the call, the first person that patient might see. And I know that can take an emotional toll. There are situations where you as a first responder must remain emotionally and mentally strong for the sake of those that are relying on you for that care. But it's also important to take care of yourselves, to ensure that you're staying healthy during these challenging times. And when you are healthy, you are able to take care of others. And I want to say, in all seriousness, do not be afraid to ask for help. We all need it some days. I want to thank you again for the invitation to speak to you today. And again, thank you for your commitment and dedication to the emergency care needs of the people of Saskatchewan. It truly does not go unnoticed by our government, and we greatly thank you for your continuing dedication to providing top quality healthcare to everyone in this province, no matter where they live. Thanks again for the opportunity to be here, and I wish you well with the rest of your annual general meeting.
Thank you, Minister Hindley. We appreciate your taking time out of your day to bring greetings on behalf of the province and to spend a few minutes with us. It means a lot for our membership, paramedics, and college to see the support that the government has provided to the profession and the system in Saskatchewan. So we very much appreciate your attendance to you and your colleague, Minister Merriman, in supporting of paramedics in Saskatchewan. Thank you again.
Thanks. All the best.
Thank you. I will pass the meeting back to Jackie to move into our college update and take us from there. Jackie.
All right. So good morning again. I am going to just walk us through some of the key things that have happened for the college over the last year in the background, and hopefully it'll give you some insight into some of the opportunities that arose and where we were able to actually leverage the pandemic to improve the ability for us to regulate. So as you're well familiar, SCoP mission and vision are well established and have been for quite some time. Our mission is to protect and serve the public interest, and we do that through regulatory activities and regulatory oversight. But the vision is where the rubber hits the road, and that is really about building a profession that is considered first and engaged by the health system, and that we maximize the utilization of you folks, of all of our members in the system. So with that in mind, we develop a number of strategies for how we're going to execute on that vision and mission. And we do that first and foremost by ensuring that we have sufficient membership numbers to support the activities that the system requires. This last year, our membership numbers shifted a bit. In terms of critical care paramedics, we currently have 36 members, and that is up 5 from last year. Advanced care paramedics, we dropped a few members. We're down 4 from last year. The intermediate care paramedics dropped as well. We're down 6 from last year. That's not surprising. Some of those intermediate care paramedics may have retired, or they may have actually moved to an advanced care level. In terms of primary care paramedics, this is where we saw the largest jump. We had an increase of approximately 43 paramedics over last year. And that increase was primarily driven by Alberta students coming to Saskatchewan, wanting to write the licensing exam. Unfortunately, I'm doubtful that those folks will retain a license in the province, but it was a bit of a bump for us last year. In terms of EMRs, we had a small drop in EMRs. We dropped by about 5, so it's pretty stable year over year. Community paramedics, we picked up 1 more, which is always good for the system. And then we issued pandemic emergency licenses. And those were licenses that we initiated at the beginning of the pandemic in an effort to address a potential shortfall in practitioners in the province. And what we did was we opened up an opportunity for individuals who had been previously licensed within the last couple of years to re-license and practice, as well as folks who had been licensed perhaps a little longer, but less than 5 years prior. And we allowed those folks to license at a license level below where they had been originally licensed. So we made some system changes at the time, and we're able to start issuing those licenses, and we are continuing to issue those licenses. With respect to labor mobility, once again, labor mobility for Saskatchewan is always a good opportunity for us to gain new practitioners. We increased by about 4% over last year, but again, a lot of those labor mobility folks came from Alberta, and they were students that were seeking an opportunity to write the exam. So we're not certain that we'll retain all of those folks, but we know that there are opportunities for employment in the province. So where possible, we're making every effort to ensure that these new folks are aware of that. In 2020, we made some really important progress just in terms of our regulatory capacity. So I had already mentioned that we made improvements to technology to support the issuance of pandemic emergency licenses, but we also improved our member registration system. We had intended to replace that system last year in 2020. We hadn't anticipated the pandemic and what that impact might have on the actual system development. So we did eventually roll out the new registry system in the summer last year. I'm pleased that the feedback we've received so far has been quite positive. Certainly from a regulatory perspective, it worked, it was much smoother than previous years. So we were very happy with the new technology. As you will be aware, we made some scope of practice changes in response to pandemic requirements. And those scope of practice things related to the introduction of an opportunity for specimen collection, as well as completion of vaccinations, and then more recently, the transport ventilations, monitoring of transport ventilations. So those were some specific scope of practice changes that were made. Early in 2020, our office moved to a hybrid work environment. And so that involved setting up a new virtual private network for our staff to be able to access files remotely. And we also moved to a VPN phone-based solution, which actually afforded us an opportunity to save some expense as well. The EMR exam development was something that emerged out of pandemic. We realized pretty quickly that we weren't going to be able to host face-to-face exams. And so we're working with our National Regulatory Association, the Canadian Organization of Paramedic Regulators, to develop an online EMR exam. The first offering is actually May the 19th. So for anybody who has experienced exam development, that was a fairly expeditious process. And we're grateful to our paramedic regulatory partners across the country for their support in making this happen. So starting in May, all of our EMR exams will be taken online, not unlike the national exam for paramedics. And they're based on the NOCP standards in the same way that the PCP, ACP exams are as well. Additionally, in 2020, our professional conduct case management needed an evaluation and some enhancement. We saw approximately 25 professional conduct cases last year, and that demonstrated to us that we definitely needed to build a more robust framework to manage those cases. So we hired 2 additional investigators last year, plus a part-time manager of professional conduct. And thankfully we did, because as of May of this year, May 1st of this year, we already have 15 professional conduct cases in the queue. We're bringing on another investigator to help manage those cases, but it is a very, very active file. On the research side of the organization, Rashid and Tosin had worked closely with the University of Regina and with Jen's support and mine. We were able to put together some presentations with Dalhousie University, as well as within the province with the Center for Patient-Oriented Research. And along with those presentations, we were able to complete our public engagement research and publish in 2 journals. So it was a good year for research, and I commend my research folks who have been working very hard over the last year to keep things moving despite the pandemic. And then lastly, I just wanted to highlight that 2020 led us down a path of exploring how to assess effective regulation and within that, how to embed cultural safety and regulation. So those are two areas that we continue to focus on in 2021. We're going to have actually a short presentation today on cultural safety and what that might look like in a regulatory environment. And in terms of the regulatory standard development, that really is about assessing whether the regulator is doing good work. And that's something that is not broadly adopted yet in Canada. There are a few colleges in Canada that have adopted it, but in the UK, it is a standard that is measured and monitored, just to ensure that regulation is actually achieving what it's intended to. One of the highlights of 2020 came late in 2020, and that was through a federal funding announcement that we received funding to develop technology, immersive technology, to support regulatory competency assessment. We had applied for funding about 8 months prior and had been working with the federal government on making sure that the funding or the application would indeed meet their requirements for funding. And we were very pleased to find out in December that we had received approximately $800,000 to do a project that will run 30 months and will allow us to develop some technology that we can use to assess applicants that might want to come to Saskatchewan from international sources, but also to be able to use that technology within the province at some point, potentially for employers to assess their staff, hopefully taking some of the pressure off of operating rooms and fixed facilities where typically folks have been required to go to get sign-offs. So it's an exciting project. We were able to award the virtual reality development portion of the project to Luxonic Technologies. We ran a request for proposal and Luxonic won that bid. And so the project has launched in January. And we're starting down the road of queuing up our project charter and getting things underway. As I mentioned, this is a very substantial grant from the federal government that is allocated 100% to the development activity. And in return, we had to commit an in-kind offering of around $200,000 worth of resources over those 30 months. And so those resources will come from existing staff as well as contract staff that we might have to pull in. At the end of it, I think it'll serve to benefit the regulation of paramedicine, both in Saskatchewan, but across the country, because our intent would be to share this technology across the country and internationally where possible, so that we can draw more ACPs and PCPs to the province and without requiring them to move here first before they're actually approved for a license. So it's very, very exciting. And we're so pleased that the federal government chose to award us this contract. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Tosin. Tosin Aruse was our Johnson Shoyama graduate student intern for the last year. Tosin graduated with her master's in public administration as of the end of April. And we have managed to keep Tosin on contract to help us with the virtual reality immersive technology project. But Tosin is also working with Rashed on a cultural safety framework for the college. So Tosin, I am going to turn things over to you. And you can start anytime.
All right, thank you, Jackie. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Tosin, as Jackie has mentioned, and I'm a research analyst and policy analyst with the college. And today I'll be talking to us briefly about cultural safety. And the aim of the presentation is just to give us an introduction into what cultural safety is, most especially because cultural safety is now the contemporary view of healthcare provision, and it is challenging the notions of cultural competency. So I will just take us through the definition. Next slide. So before I give us the definition of cultural safety, I would like to define an underlying concept called culture. Everyone has a culture. However, while we are born into cultures, we do not come with culture like from birth. We were born into these cultures, and culture is something that we learn. It is dynamic and it adapts to changing circumstances. So some aspects of our culture are not so easily seen, while some aspects are easy to see. And the iceberg model here gives us a useful example. So we have the top of the iceberg showing factors such as our dress, our food, our language, games, our ceremonies, our occupation. Those are easily seen factors, and those are part of our culture. And also, we have the non-visible parts that is very difficult to identify, and it is very difficult to understand. They are also part of our culture. And sometimes we have people trying to define culture as ethnicity, but these non-visible parts are really the major aspect of our culture. And so we have examples of those aspects being beliefs, our notion of time, how we handle emotions, our communication style, our notions of modesty. Those are part of our culture. And this aspect of culture majorly comes from our life experiences, and they come from our daily attitude. So for example, if we have a refugee that has experienced war, their life experiences determine the kind of culture they have. And then in Canada, we have the indigenous people that have been impacted by colonization. These particular people, they have a different notion to life as well, based on their life experiences. And our current circumstances also have a way of defining our culture. So if I'm in a bad mood, my culture at that particular time is so different. So culture can take different forms, and it is not the same for everybody. It is different for everyone. So no two person has the same culture. Next slide, please. And therefore, it is important to know that culture has a very great impact on our health, because it can determine how a healthcare provider and how a patient interacts. It can determine how they both view health, because if my culture is different, I have a different notion to life. The way I see life is different. I have different experiences. So therefore, the way I see my health is different. So for example, we have the indigenous people in Canada. They see health as a spiritual thing. So therefore, the way they see health is different, the way they see illness is different. And so when it comes to healthcare, it's very important for us to be very careful, because we have this vulnerable population that view health in a different way. And therefore, we need culturally safe practitioners who understand what cultural safety is. And so, for instance, in the paramedic profession, we have our own culture, we have our own values, we have our own priorities. And therefore, if these priorities intersect with a health provider's personal behavior, personal identity, we can have issues of we can have health cultures becoming ethnocentric. And therefore, we have issues of discrimination, whereby a paramedic that's been trained in a Western European style feels that they know more, better than maybe a indigenous person that doesn't really see health in that way, that sees health as spiritual. And therefore, we can have discrimination. There can be marginalization. And therefore, assessing health becomes so difficult for this particular group of people, and how the healthcare system fits into their needs becomes so different. And therefore, that is why we need culturally safe care in the healthcare system. Next slide. Okay, so what is cultural safety? Cultural safety is just a concept that deals with the notion of power. That yes, we have healthcare providers, we have patients, and they both have different cultures. Some very learned, the patient is not as learned as the provider. So there's power imbalances. And therefore, cultural safety is just trying to promote an environment where there's where the environment is physically, spiritually, socially, and emotionally safe for the clients. where the client feels empowered to comment on practices, where they feel empowered, to know that yes, the provider sees them for who they are, and where there's no denial of their true identity, be it they are transgender, they are indigenous, be it they are people of color or whatsoever, and they are respected in that environment. So cultural safety extends beyond cultural awareness. It extends beyond cultural sensitivity or even cultural competency. So cultural competency, as we all know, is learning how to work in cross-cultural situations. So what cultural safety is saying that yes, we can work in cross-culture, we can learn how to work in cross-cultural situations, but we need to go beyond that. We need to self-reflect on our own attitude, on our own culture, and think about how it can impact another person's health outcomes or how it can impact another person's daily life. So cultural safety basically gives the power to the patient to say, yes, the care you rendered to me was actually safe and it was good to my own level. Next slide, please. So I'm going to leave us here today with this model of cultural safety. Is a way of us remembering how to go about it. So the first point here says self-reflection. S is for self-reflection. And that is us creating an attitude of examining our own cultures. You examining your own practices. Do you carry biases? Do you carry stereotypes? Do you just group a particular people and say, oh yes, they behave in this particular manner? So we have to work on that self-reflection. When you're with a patient or with a client, you have to self-reflect on your own practices. Then we have H for history, and that is learning, trying to have a conversation with your patient, with your clients, to see that you understand their history, to understand where they're coming from, what they've gone through in their daily circumstances or in their own life experience. And here is acknowledging that, yes, there's a difference. A difference in the case that, yes, our realities are different. I'm a paramedic, and you are a patient. We have different socioeconomic status. We've been through different life experiences, and therefore we cannot say, yes, we are the same, we think the same way, or we have the same culture. And then we have her, which is for us to reduce our assumptions that can translate into our actions. And these actions can demean, disempower, or even diminish another human being or the patient themselves. So reducing our assumption is also very important. And lastly, we have E, which is giving the expertise to the patient to say, yes, the care I received was actually safe. So I want to say that it is not the lack of awareness about working in cross-cultural relationship or working in cross-cultural situations that actually creates health inequities. Inequities exist majorly because of biases, institutional racism, marginalization, unexamined privileges. And therefore, as healthcare professionals and even as an organization, we need to address these factors through healthcare, through health professionals being educated on cultural safety. We need to go beyond cultural competency. We need to say, yes, I know what it is to be culturally safe. I know how to behave in a culturally safe environment. And therefore, the college has developed the cultural safety policy to guide the staff members on how to be culturally safe. I'm glad to present this to you guys. I hope you've learned something out of it. And thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Tosin. The importance of cultural safety can't be underestimated, as you all know. And we felt that at the college, we needed to start with us. We needed to make sure that we were culturally appropriate and safe for the people yourselves who interact with us as well as patients. So the rubber hits the road with us, and then we'll see where our framework takes us. So thank you, Tosin. Appreciate that. So I believe we are moving on. Okay. So at this point, what I'd like to do is open the floor to any questions you might have. I'm just going to stop the share here so that I can see the chat. And we're free to answer any of your questions that you might have about the college or about protocols, anything you might have. Just feel free to type into the chat and we'll go from there. And if we don't have any questions, I'm going to make Kyle sing for us.
Yeah, just type those questions into the Q&A.
There will be no singing, sorry.
All right. One quick question from Connie was, she was just wondering how many people are in attendance today. And I can answer that question. And we have 126 people on the call today.
Which is terrific. That's probably the most that we've seen at our AGM so far.
All right, so here's another question from Dan Lewis. I see in the annual report that the study on patient engagement is being published in Australia. When will we see the study here, or do we need a subscription to the Australian magazine to see it?
So you won't need a subscription. I believe we have put the link, I could be wrong, Colette, you might be able to help me on this one, but we can link right to that study and to the report. The publication in the Australasian Journal was specific, an analysis of one aspect of the patient engagement research. So the patient engagement research, if you recall, was really about getting the patient's perspectives on the types of services they thought they needed, what they did receive, and their level of overall satisfaction. So one aspect of that was published in the Australasian Journal. We also have received publication in the British Medical Journal on the emergency medical services side. And so we will provide those links if we haven't already. But thanks for asking that. That's a good question, Dan.
All right, we have a couple more questions. This is great. So Sherry J is wondering what the future of community paramedics are in the province, and is there any plan to expand this service outside of the major centers and into rural Saskatchewan?
So I can answer part of it, and then if Jen wants to jump in, that would be terrific. I think community paramedicine is where the services are going to need to exist. I think that it's fair to say that the more we can keep people out of emergency rooms, and the more we can keep people out of hospitals, the better service we're providing for the patient. That said, we've established standards for community paramedics, and a number of people have taken the program and are successfully working in that realm. I think there are probably going to be different shades of what community paramedicine looks like, depending on what the communities need. But I definitely see it as a foundational piece for health service delivery in the province. Jen, did you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I don't think so. Ultimately, it would be up to the EMS services or the SHA to sort of determine where community paramedics might go and how that service may be expanded. So we would definitely work with services and the SHA to make sure that program can expand as needed. But ultimately, it's designed to be kind of driven by community need rather than, college driven.
I think to add to that too, Jackie and Jen, the college has responded, I think, well over the last couple of years in an as-needed basis in coordination with what Sask Poly has been able to deliver to accommodate those services and paramedics that are practicing it while the program development occurs based on need, and which will drive how Sask Poly delivers it. So we're always open to suggestions on how to influence that and meet the needs of either Sask Poly or the health system, and will continue to do so as we see community paramedics more deployed and more available to provide the needs very specific to communities as we have a large rural population.
Mhm. All right. I see there's a bunch of questions coming in the chat as well as the Q&A. Colette, I'm going to let you decide what's next.
Yeah, I'll do the Q&A first. So for the future questions, if you can put them in the Q&A, that just makes it a little easier, but I can read from both. So next question from Dan Bradnam is, have any changes been made or are in the process of being made to protect patients and EMS providers in response to the death of Lee Schroeder? And I believe that was the paramedic. Yeah, I won't describe.
Yeah, so I think that we always have an interest in making sure we're taking care of members because philosophically, we believe that healthy members equate to stronger practitioners. And we are working on our member wellness on an ongoing basis. We will provide, as we see resources available, we provide information regarding those resources. In terms of protection, I'm not sure what that would look like. Kyle, maybe you are able to speak to that more appropriately.
Well, I think in relation to Lee and what occurred, you know, the experts on health and safety as it comes to occupational health and safety are well established, and any profession, much like the paramedics, would look to the policy that's developed in relation to that in the workplace. And, you know, the college supports that in whatever way we can that further kind of contributes to how we deliver services to the patient. Certainly on the radar, and we look to work with those other agencies like OH&S and Health and Safety to support that. Nothing, I would say, currently on the docket specifically to Lee's situation, other than supporting what occupational health and safety and member wellness specifically for individuals has provided and will continue to provide as a college. As Jackie said, a healthy member will support how they deliver their care and treatment to the patients that they're called to treat.
Thanks, Kyle.
Okay, next question is from Jesse Dunsing. Is there any updates or anything in the works in regards to protocol development / drug monograph changes or additions that we might see in the next year?
Jen, would you like to take this question?
Yep. Not that I'm aware of right now. Of course, that can always change just based on what we have submitted and what the Paramedic Practice Committee approves. Right now, I don't have anything that I can comment on, but like I said, that's always possible to change as we move forward.
All right, next question from Jaden Damon. With the decline of ICPs in the province, is the college looking at expanding the scope of practice of PCPs to include, it says include versed. I'm not sure what that means.
Oh, versed. Okay, so that's a good Jen question too.
Not right now. We're definitely kind of been looking at it as well. There's a lot of challenges in increasing our PCP scope of practice. One, our current PCP scope is actually already currently over and above what the national standard in the NOCP is. What happens is that creates a lot of issues for labor mobility, and it also starts to create kind of some knowledge gap when our scope of practice and our education or the training don't quite meet at an appropriate level. So right now, it's not something that a request that we've received or looked at. The Paramedic Practice Committee would definitely look at that if a proposal is submitted, but there's a lot of other information other factors, I guess, to look at just not just, should we include it within the scope of practice, but we have to look at the scope of practice, the knowledge gap, and labor mobility or national implications as well. So that's just kind of a few of the pieces that are sort of all involved.
All right, thank you. Next question from Margaret Hosick. Is there a plan for getting mandatory skills this year, ITLS, CPR, etc., or will they be waived again? Currently, we're being told not to meet in person and all classes and courses have been canceled.
Yeah, I cannot even begin to imagine how challenging it is to meet in person to get this training. Unfortunately, we can't waive them 2 years in a row. So this is the year that you will have to update your skills, your mandatory certificates, if they are expiring this year. Hopefully you have sufficient time before December to do that. I realize that this is not without challenge, but it really, we really do need to at least every couple of years make sure we're checking in. So yeah, sorry, I can't waive those again this year.
All right, next question from Jody Sefton. Is there any chance of adding benzos to PCP scope, especially out in rural where there aren't many ACPs and we can't upgrade to ICP?
So that really kind of follow the same response as the previous question regarding VERSED. We have to be really careful and cautious in just continuously increasing a scope of practice for one practitioner, simply because we have a lack of higher level trained practitioners. So not at this time.
Colette, I noticed there's one question that can I go ahead and read that came in the chat that we missed?
There's a few in the chat that I'm still getting to.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and there is a question about licensing fees and benefits, and we can talk about that now, or I know that's already on the agenda.
It is, and so I'll just mention that we are going to talk about licensing fees, and if you have a question when I'm busy talking about it, you can pop it into the Q&A, and I'd be happy to answer it at that point. I think it'll answer your question. Thanks, Colette.
Yeah, no problem. All right, yeah, we've got more questions here. From Stephen Skorodko, will credits be given for COVID vaccine training and swab testing?
Jennifer?
I just received, I believe it was the last week or two, a submission for the SHA COVID vaccine training, which was approved. We haven't received anything regarding swab testing. I would think that would be something that would likely meet approval, but I haven't received any submissions for it today.
All right, next question from Peter Tibbetts. I know with being one of those medics from Alberta, are we moving to require liability insurance as other provinces do?
So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is not this year because we need to give you proper lead time. So we are in the process of evaluating that requirement for liability insurance. As you will remember, we're one of only 2 professions in the province that does not require liability coverage. So it is coming, but we definitely wanted to give you sufficient lead time so that you weren't having to worry about unexpected costs this year.
All right, this is the last question that we have here. And then another one came in. So, all right, from Tanika Shiltra, will there be more PCC members in the future due to the increases of complaints and investigations?
I'm assuming PCC committee members, is that, maybe that's what you're thinking, and that is a definite possibility. We may create panels so that we're not having the entire committee review all of the files. We may create panels of the committee that will review the files and then make recommendations to the full committee. This bump in PCC cases is not unexpected. When we rolled out the new system, we put an online complaint submission capacity into the system. And so there's been significant uptake using that, which is a good thing. So yes, the long answer is yes, we could see an increase in committee size.
All right. So here's a comment from Lyle from Parkland. He just wanted everybody to know that Parkland is offering all ACLS, PALS, and ITLS training courses. And they're doing it in very structured small groups with health and safety protocols. So if people want to reach out to Lyle at Parkland Ambulance, they're also using a virtual method, so shorter classroom sessions. Yeah, so I think you all know how to get a hold of Lyle, but Lyle at parklandambulance.com. We also have a lot of, this is me just adding things, but we have a lot of the courses listed on our website under the CME opportunities page, and that gets updated as we get more info. So you can pop on over to that anytime and see new stuff. I try to put new stuff at the top, but there's a lot of info there.
Excellent, thank you. All righty.
All right. And we have another question. Should this be the last question then?
This should be the last one, yeah.
All right, from Dale Linkwich. What is the college's opinion on the job outlook in our province in the coming years? And is there anything being done to address the educational backlog for those who are desiring to become PCPs? SAS Polytech's waitlist is currently over 2 years.
Yeah, good. That's a really great question. Job outlook, fantastic. There is unlimited potential for PCPs and ACPs in this province, and EMRs as well. And so I would say you won't worry about finding a job. The education is an interesting comment, because we really only have 2 educational facilities in the province. I know that there are a significant number of out-of-province educators that are offering a component of online and in-person learning. So there is that as well. The question about capacity really is one that we address with SCoP Poly. I know that they are doing their best to try and increase numbers of seats, and that they did increase the number of seats in the ACP program this last year. But unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't answer that question more directly, because I simply don't have that information. But I think you're raising a very valid point. If we want more people here, some of them have to be homegrown. So thank you. With that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Kyle, just to call the business portion of the meeting to order again.
Thank you, Jackie. I just want to make one last comment specific to the question to health and safety that was alluded to Lee Schroeder. Just more of an FYI, there are a number of initiatives across Canada with the Paramedic Chiefs of Canada, as well as Paramedic Association of Canada, that are working towards a national monument for paramedics on Parliament Hill that recognizes fallen paramedics in the line of duty, and in relation to mental health and wellness that is related to the job that's being done. Paramedics do not have that on the Hill. Fire profession, police, they do. And those 2 organizations specifically have been working very hard to procure land on government property to have a monument. So I would recommend that you search out that information from the Paramedic Chiefs of Canada and the Paramedic Association of Canada, as well as partnerships locally with the province, with the Paramedic Services Chiefs of Saskatchewan as well, that support those programs to recognize fallen paramedics in the line of duty, as in Lee's case, as well as those related to health and wellness, mental health and wellness in the profession. So just wanted to remind everybody that there are programs and initiatives out there to support that. So.
Thanks very much. I'm going to turn it back to, I'm going to start up your, okay.
Perfect.
All right.
So we'll call the business meeting to order at 9:55. And I will have you take over, Jackie.
Okay, so we're going to start with resolutions. This year we, sorry about that. This year we received one submission, and I will just read it out loud, and then I'm going to turn it over to Steve to comment on his resolution. So the resolution received was that, and basically I'll just read it. Whereas membership fees of the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics have increased every year by CPI since 2011, and whereas wage increases have not increased by the same amount, and whereas the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics have a substantial reserve of funds, and whereas a membership fee increase is not required at this time to support college initiatives and programs. Therefore, be it resolved that the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics membership fees be frozen at current rates, and be it resolved that if the Saskatchewan College of Paramedics requires to increase membership fees, that a business case be presented to the membership at the AGM and voted on by the membership before membership fees are increased. So this resolution was submitted by Steve Skoradko and seconded by Kelly Prime. And what I'll do now is I will turn it over to Steve to speak to this resolution.
Good morning, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're perfect.
Excellent, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I guess just in looking at it in how fees have been going up 2% a year every year, so it's in the neighborhood of around between $5 and $10 every year. Membership fees for the college have increased. In that same timeline, though, wages and that across the province haven't kept up with that same rate. And that also seeing that there is a substantial reserve in the college's funds, that I ask that they just be frozen for this time, and not that they be frozen for eternity, but that just that on an as need or business case go forward basis, they looked at being increased for specific projects or things. I understand that, you know, there is things, you know, COVID being one of those years that threw a lot of monkey wrenches into a lot of things. And I think that with what the college has in reserves and what it's working towards, at the rate that we're at, which is one of the highest professional membership fees across Canada, that we look at just freezing and maintaining that unless there is a special situation which needs increased funding and support from the membership.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So as the college, I'll just provide a little bit of background before we actually have the vote. And we'll be doing the vote using a polling function. So I'm just going to speak very briefly to why we hold reserves and what the real intent and purpose of those reserves might be. Sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of this video. So the primary purpose for holding reserves is to address unexpected, unanticipated consequences. And as Steve mentioned, we have good reserves in place right now. And that's because over the last 12 years, the college has been very careful about ensuring that expenditures are managed. And we do that by cost sharing our space. We share with 5 other regulators. By sharing resources and cost sharing where possible for things that every regulator might need, but we shouldn't all have to purchase. So we've made a lot of strides in terms of making sure that we can set aside money for reserves and build up the contingency in the event that we have an unexpected shortfall in revenue. And this actually happened a couple of years ago when the government, we had an economic downturn in Saskatchewan, and the trickle-down economical impact of that was that municipalities had reduced funding. And when the municipalities had reduced funding, the fire services lost some of their funding. And with that reduction in funding to fire, a number of services decided that they weren't going to renew their licenses. That resulted in about a 10% drop in revenue, which doesn't sound like a lot, but 10% is substantial. it is more than the cost of a position. And so that loss in revenue had to be made up in other areas. So we looked at where we could partner, where we could get grant money to do the work we needed to do, et cetera, et cetera. And so those kinds of opportunities potentially will always exist, but whether or not we get them is very uncertain. The other reason we hold reserves are unexpected demands on resources, like an increase in PCC files. So some of our files cost upwards of $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 to investigate. And so we have a budget for PCC consulting. And when it exceeds that budget amount, we may have to tap into reserves. Unexpected opportunities are things like I mentioned this morning, that we have to put money in to get money. So even though we're getting a grant from the federal government, we're expected to do an in-kind portion. And that in-kind portion means either using our existing staff or bringing in new staff or buying technology. Catastrophic events like the system changes required for pandemic, it's unexpected. It doesn't happen all the time, but that's really what a reserve is. Other things like fluctuations in income and expenses. So, you know, we have expenses that continue to increase. So by freezing a budget, what you're essentially doing is you're adopting a declining revenue stream. And so our rent is stable until, I believe, next year, and then we'll see an increase. But our service contracts, our consulting fees, our legal fees, all of the other things that the college pays for, including utilities and things like that, those go up every year. And so we would be operating on a declining budget, which is not impossible to do. But the college is obliged to make sure that it's sustainable over time. So we would have to ensure that we look at options for replacing the revenue that we're pulling out of the reserves. Just to give you some context about paramedic licensing fees, right now among self-regulatory bodies, we live right in the middle. So at the very low end, PANB has licensing fees of $410. And at the top end, Manitoba has licensing fees of $550. And so we're sitting currently right about in the middle of that. So in terms of other self-regulated jurisdictions, our licensing fees are extremely, they're on par with what other self-regulated professions are paying. I apologize for the size of this font, but this is to give you some context about licensing fees in the context of other health professions in this province. We're at the lower end of other health professions licensing fees. At the top end, believe it or not, are the chiropractors who pay $3,600 a year for their license. And below us, physiotherapists are at $500, and then we drop down to the Dental Association for $330. The reason this is relevant is because if you take a look at number 6, Registered Psych Nurses of Saskatchewan, right now their fees are at $800. They are increasing their fees by $200 this next year because they have had a revenue shortfall that cannot be recovered. And that was due to a loss in membership. A $200 jump in 1 year is substantial for anybody. And it isn't going to be taken very lightly, but it is essential in order to keep the college operational. The college is mandated by law to stay in operation, and we are mandated to ensure that we're sustainable. So some of the options that you know, we would have to explore in terms of risk mitigation is if the resolution passes, we will definitely have to come up with a shortfall recovery plan, and we will adopt a declining budget model, which probably means that we'll do things a little differently. We may look at a different governance model that involves more member involvement as opposed to hired staff. So, you know, it's not without careful thought and consideration that that I know you're bringing this forward, and I know that it looks like we have a lot of money in the bank. But I'll just remind everybody that one case at the Supreme Court will cost us easily $500,000. So you get 2 legal cases in a year, and you're bankrupt. And it's not good governance to live that close to the edge. It seems like a lot of money, but we're not rich. We're very careful with our money. And so I encourage you to just consider that, you know, we're doing the best we can. I do understand that you're not getting pay increases every year, but I also don't want to have to be in a position to come back next year and say, we've had an extreme revenue shortfall and we'll have to increase fees by hundreds of dollars instead of $5. So with that, I think I'll just turn it back to Colette to run the voting side of things. I'm just gonna move this out of the way. There we go.
Can I ask or add 2 points or 2 questions onto the discussion?
Sure.
I guess the first question is just looking at the financial statements, the amount that the college pays for rent. Why is that such at a high end, like $100,000 a year for rent? That's one question.
Okay, so we don't pay $100,000 a year actually because we sublet to 3 other colleges. So of that $100,000 we pay, we get refunded by 3 other colleges for a chunk of that. So we're actually paying less than we were paying when we were located on Argyle Street. So the rent has essentially dropped from where it was 8 years ago.
Second question is, if this resolution doesn't move forward, what amount in the bank would deem as, I guess, a comfortable rate, or that would be a position that the college would say, okay, we have enough funds, or is this 2% just an ongoing, you know, I guess that's the question out there is,
Yeah.
you know, at what point is there enough money or is there not enough money?
I think that's a really reasonable question to ask. And I would suggest that you want to have at minimum 8 to 10 months worth of operating revenue in your reserves, which is really where we're at, where we can probably survive that long without revenue, as long as we don't get any court cases. I think that if you see our budget, we're eking by now with a balanced budget. It's getting tougher and tougher because as our PCC cases and as the expectations increase on that side, we're having to bring in more resources. So I don't think that the days of contributing large sums of money to reserves are behind us. At this point, we are maintaining a balanced budget without hiring a lot of staff. You'll notice that we have staff on contract, and that's very intentional because we can't afford to put them on staff permanently because there's an additional 20% cost attributed to permanent staff for budget, for benefits and other things. So the long and the short of it is we probably have a good reserve right now. And I don't anticipate that we're going to have extra money to contribute to that reserve for the foreseeable future.
So, so there are a couple of questions here from folks, and I wanted to mention, I saw that Bill Iwabuchi raised his hand, but Bill, if you can type your question into the Q&A or the chat, that would be really great. And yeah, so the questions from the Q&A, Kathy Chrisman is asking if it's possible to amend the resolution to change the increase to every other year. And then Dan Lewis is wondering, are all SCoP staff getting raises every year? And if so, at what percentage? Referencing that paramedics are getting 0 or 1%. And another member has also commented, just, you know, the scope has increased so much, why not an increase in wage that reflects scope increases?
Okay, I'll try and address those questions in the order. So the first one was, could the resolution be amended? Yes, it can, but that's with the permission of the submitter. The second one, sorry, Colette, can you give me that again?
For sure, yeah. So the second one was, are all SCoP staff getting raises every year? And if so, at what percentage?
So in our bylaws and policies, and this predates many of us, there is an escalator clause in there to account for cost of living increase, which was 0.6% last year, I believe. It's CPI as of October 1st of each year. So even though you guys might pay an additional $5 a year, the staff, some of the staff still receive increases of CPI each year, which is, it can range from 0.6 to 1.9% a year, roughly. It depends on the year. Not all staff get increases because their salaries may be at what's considered the maximum for that particular role. And then the next question, was there another one, Colette?
Yeah, just so Matthew Schlavlo is asking, our scope has increased so much. Why not an increase in wage that reflects scope increase?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the college is not tied in any way to your compensation. The college operates to serve the interests of the public, and wages and wage negotiation really lives in the realm of the Ministry of Health and the SHA and your particular union. So I regret that that just simply isn't our wheelhouse, and we don't have any influence on that.
So Rob Ferland is wondering if employers cover the cost of the membership fees.
In many cases, employers cover most, if not all, of the cost. Kyle, I'll let you actually speak because I know you wanted to say something. I saw your mute come off there.
I did on a different component of that, but certainly there are, depending on the service providers and public or contracted services, various, and certainly whether there's collective agreements with unions involved as well. There's a variety of ways that fees are covered, and we don't know them all, to be fair, to speak intelligently to them. There's various models, and again, we don't particularly get involved with how they're paid. The member itself is a self-regulated practitioner who is responsible for those fees in whichever manner they get compensated for. So, but anecdotally, yeah, there are some programs that government supports, the SHA supports for its members, and contracted providers and collective agreements provide as well.
Okay.
All right.
And Colette, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so yeah, Bill typed out his comment. Bill Iwabuchi, the fees are the cost of doing business as an autonomous professional body. We want quality of service and representation. So that was a comment. And then we've got
Colette, and I think that actually deserves a bit of highlighting. The college, for where it started and where it is today, and we have a number of past presidents here, Derek Dagenet, Dale Backlund, who was instrumental in much of the work at the beginning. It certainly does take a lot of resource to evolve a professional regulatory, self-regulatory college in healthcare. And many of the other colleges that we collaborate with and certainly look to us, and Manitoba is a great example how we are the example that Manitoba is using because of the successes that the college have had. It takes those resources to even get at the table of some of the grant funding. Those are free dollars that we get that take money to receive. So without the efforts of research and some of the staff that we have spearheading those projects, we wouldn't be fortunate enough to evolve our scope of practice, to evolve how we deliver service, and to earn the trust of the public. It takes years to build trust with the public and competency, or to demonstrate competency, and can take only a few events to destroy that when you're in the healthcare profession that relies and build and has trust with patients who require us. So I think I just wanted to highlight that as well, that the work that's being done the successes that we've seen have come at a cost and will continue to come at a cost if we want to evolve the profession. We've evolved to include CCPs, critical care paramedics. We've evolved our community paramedic program. We've evolved and worked with copper and developing, contributing to the developments of the NOCPs. We look back 10 years to where we've come. In 10 years of work without the college, we would be nowhere where we are today. So we recognize that it takes the finances to do that, and we are subject to outside influences like professional conduct that we do have to mitigate. But that is legislative responsibility, and in order to maintain the college, we have to work to demonstrate that to government and, most importantly, the public, that we can self-regulate ourselves.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right, so we have a couple more comments. So from Gilbert Maraboto, sorry if I've messed up pronunciations. If the rent is not 100,000, why are we using it as an expense and not the real expense of 1/3, as you said?
That's reflected, if you look, Gilbert, in the revenue side, you'll see that the revenue is offset. It'll show revenue from other sources. And so that's where when you account for expenses, you account for the full expense. And then the revenue stream will reflect the money we get from the other regulators. It is, I believe it's a common accounting practice, which is why it's reflected that way.
All right, so we've got Margaret Hosick is saying, so really the proposal is just that the college will need to present to membership a business case in order to increase membership fees, which is simply accountability to your membership for increased fees. So it's just,
yeah, I believe that the proposal is that the fees be frozen, and that if we need to increase fees, that we present a business case. Yes.
All right, so next sort of comment from Brenda Brandt. It's difficult for rural services whose jobs are classified as other than full-time. We only get $5 an hour to be ready at a radio calls notice, yet we pay the same fees as full-time paramedics. This fee increase is difficult for us to deal with. So that's a comment. I don't know if you want to answer that. And I've got one more question here. Question from Dale Backlin. Question for the submitters of the motion. The motion mentions no wage increases. My understanding is that funding has been provided for wage increases recently. Is their motion correct? They also mentioned fees were some of the highest in Canada. Can they cite the data source that backs that statement?
So I appreciate all of those comments. And I think we should probably move to the polling at this point.
Yeah, I think some of the ones that are coming in are comments and stuff too. So shall I launch that poll then?
Please.
Should I allow the panelists to vote? I think there's only one voting member on the panel, so I'll just tick that. Okay. If you're not eligible to vote, don't vote. All right, so the question is, do you support the proposed resolution regarding freezing membership fees? You can vote yes or no there.
So Colette, are we just about ready to?
Sure, yeah, the numbers stopped moving. We've got 98 people voting. And we have 100 people who voted. Are you able to see the results at all? Just the questions.
I can see the results. Okay, if anybody wishes to vote, now's your chance, and we're going to close it in 1 minute. Okay. All right. So Colette, do you want to, can you see the polling? Colette? Colette, are you there?
I am sorry, I had to get to a button.
Okay. So can you speak to the polling or can you show it?
Yeah, I can share the results.
So it looks like the resolution will pass. So we will freeze the current fees at this point. And should we need to recover reserves next year, we will come to the AGM to advise you accordingly. And I appreciate everybody's comments and I appreciate the vote. So thank you very much. Okay, let's move on. So instead of taking a break, I think we'll just keep going if that's okay. Sorry, I guess I preemptively told everybody what the results are. Kyle, I'll throw it back to you.
That's okay. It's all good. So member at large election results. We, as you see on the screen, William Bream was elected into that member at large position, and Jason Farrago will be re-elected for a second turn, our fire representative. So congratulations to those two individuals, and thank you for putting your name forward and joining council or remaining on council. I don't know how to do a virtual hand clap, but let's just do a virtual. Oh no, I can. I could do an emoji, can't I? Nonetheless, it makes me happy to present the 2020-21 Council for the College of Paramedics. As you know, I will stay on for 1 more year as president, and our current vice president is Matt McGurk. Bill Fisher remains our past president and wise one. Sorry, Bill. Jason Farrago, member at large fire representative. Chris Fay, member at large. William Bream, another member at large. Mike Meyer, member at large. Karen Gibbons, one of our public representatives. Joel Gritzfeld, public representative, and we are waiting a new public representative. I'm not sure when we'll hear, but I assume shortly we will have that last seat filled. Which leads me to the appreciation and thanks of our previous or now fully retired. I know Tim has retired from his paramedic practice with Medivie Health Services and departs our council. So we appreciate Tim and all of his knowledge and experience that guided us through the last few years. We appreciate that, Tim, and know you're not too far, so we can always reach out to you for support, as just because you retired doesn't mean you don't stop contributing. So thank you again, Tim, for all your contributions in the profession as well as the college. As well, our previous public representative, Olu, which I will not pronounce his last name because it will not do us justice. We just know Olu as our departing public representative, who has been with us for quite a few years and has supported us from a legal perspective as well as a public rep. He is not here today. I don't think. He sends his regrets. Olu will be missed. Always a pleasure to have his insight, even though we didn't always agree with it because he talked in legal terms, but was well valued. So Olu, if you're listening from somewhere, we appreciate your contributions to our profession. And I will now call need a motion to adjourn. I'm not sure if someone just wants to put in the, how do you want to get a motion, Jackie?
In the chat.
In the chat, just need one person to make a motion for us to adjourn before we move forward. Kathy Chrisman moves to adjourn. Thank you, Kathy. And I will hand it back to Jackie for, or did you want to take a break, Jackie, or did you want to jump right into the two? And I think I lost Jackie. Uh-oh, now you're going to get me to sing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's take a 5-minute bio break and then we'll jump in with Christine's presentation followed by Taz. Okay? So 5 minutes, folks. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I think we are back. And it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Christine Belinsky. Over the past 2 decades, Christine has worked in the human services sector in a variety of roles, including mindfulness facilitator, a crisis counselor, a school teacher, community justice facilitator, and a doula. The concept of mindfulness is at her core and at the core of Christine's work, which is grounded in her personal journey as a mediator and in her interest in the mind-body connection. Christine is a registered psychotherapist with a private practice focusing on trauma recovery and a faculty member at the Center for Mindfulness Studies. Christine holds a Master of Educational Psychology from the University of Regina and a bachelor's degree in Indigenous Education from the First Nations University of Canada. So please join me in welcoming Christine as our next presenter. Christine, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackie, and thanks everybody for those who stuck around. I know it's a long morning. So I actually want to just, before I get started, I really want to take a moment and thank the members of the college for the work that you do in the community, for the work you've done and helped my own family, for the work that you do in terms of supporting people in their most vulnerable moments, in helping them when they're suffering, in offering comfort and compassion to those that are in need, in relation to the people you're supporting, and for saving lives. So it's like really important work. I'm very grateful for the work you do, and I'm grateful to be here to be offering something that could be of service to you. I know many of you likely have mindfulness practices in one way or another. Maybe you've never identified it as mindfulness, but maybe after today, you'll see that there's a lot of the things that you always put into practice that are actual mindfulness practices and support your awareness and attention. So I want to make note of that. It's by no means, a magic wand, but it is a tool that can support people and navigating the stresses of life. So I'm just going to move us forward. So today, what are we going to do for our hour? We're going to hopefully define mindfulness. There's no universal definition, but we're going to look at a definition that is being currently used. Do some introductory practices that will help us with stress reduction and building resilience. Look at the research. And then there's some opportunity either throughout the workshop or at the end that you can present questions. So using the chat option, it's always available. So if you think of something, throw it in there, and then at the end of the workshop, we'll have time to go over some of the questions. And I'll also be sharing this slide deck with you and my email if people have any questions that come up after. So before we begin, actually, I'm just going to invite you to take a moment and see what you need. I guess we just had a break, so that will help. But if there's anything you need to support your presence, like shifting your seat or getting a glass of water or standing, feel free to take a moment and do that. Okay. So between the stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is a power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. This is a quote by Viktor Frankl. And it's really actually at the core of mindfulness. There is a stimulus. There's something, whether it's a demand, a concern, a stressor, and then there's our response to it. And in that space, we actually have choice. But a lot of times we go so habitually into automatic pilot and we respond without a lot of awareness. What mindfulness does is it actually helps us get aware of that small space between the stimulus and our response. So, speaking of which, I thought I would start with actually a brief purposeful pause. And the stop practice, it's intended to help people interrupt this automatic pilot mode that we get in and actually get back into the present moment. So being in the present moment has been shown to be super helpful in terms of navigating the negative effects of our stress response. And so first off, we're just going to actually put it into practice. So first thing of the S is just actually stop what you're doing as best you can. I know some of you might actually be attending and you're also working, or you're attending to kids or other things. So as best you can, stop what you're doing. And we're going to observe our experience. So first, take a couple deep breaths, possibly the deepest breath you've had all day. And just even notice, is the breath smooth? Is it deep? Is it shallow? Just getting curious. Noticing what your body sensations are. Are you tired? Are you sitting or standing? Is there a restless energy in your legs? Do you have hunger or a sense of satisfaction in the belly? How's your posture? As I say that, I notice mine's a little bit crouched. Noticing any aches or pains that you have. And what are your emotions? What are you feeling right now? Is there curiosity, excitement, boredom, something in between? Just checking in with yourself. And then just noticing your thoughts. Noticing as they come and go. Noticing that not all your thoughts are facts. Some of them are just observations, opinions, false beliefs. Some of them are facts. Just noticing what your thoughts are in this moment as best you can. And then proceed mindfully. So as best you can, taking in what speaks to you today, doing your best to minimize distractions. And when you find yourself wandered, your attention pulled away, that's a moment of mindfulness. Every time you notice your attention is somewhere other than where your body is, that's a moment of awareness and choice. Do you want to stay following that train of thought or that activity, or would you like to come back to what you've intended to do, which is attend this workshop? It's all about choice and observing that you have it. So, how many of you can relate to this image? Our thoughts like time travel, and they can take us away from where we are and what we're doing. Thoughts are wonderful. I don't want to say that they're not, but we're at work and we're thinking about our family and our home and our friends. And then we're at work, and I know a lot of you have a very different work environment other than in front of the desk. But I didn't have the time to draw an ambulance, and my draw skills aren't very good. So for the purpose of this, you're at work and you find yourself thinking about, or you're at home, you think about work, colleagues, patients, and then you're at work and you think about the opposite. So mindfulness tools, what they do is actually they help us strengthen our awareness and have more choice over where our thoughts are and which ones we want to follow. And at this point in time, where our attention is like a commodity that's being bought by marketers, and there's new ways of grabbing our attention, and there's less ways to strengthen our attention because everything is like 10, 20-second clips, right? It's hard to read a whole book or watch a whole movie when we can watch the speed quicker and do everything a little bit quicker or do more things. So slowing down and actually choosing where our attention wants to go is almost like a revolution or something different, right? Like actually having choice of where our attention is getting pulled. And that is the practice. So when you think of mindfulness, what comes to mind? We look to the image on my right. Many of us will go for walks, but how many of the times are we actually taking in our environment? We live so much on automatic pilot. Like we drive, we eat, we walk, we even speak without clear awareness of what we're doing. It's a condition that many of us experience. So, as I mentioned, there's no actual universal definition of mindfulness. But for the purpose of today's workshop, we're going to use this, which is a very common one by John Kabat-Zinn. It's the awareness that emerges from paying attention in a particular way. So it's not just paying attention, but it's on purpose to the present moment, the entirety of our experience, pleasant and unpleasant, and non-judgmentally. So that's the definition for today. In terms of, the central components of mindfulness and what actually is it? So mindfulness is a state, it's a trait, or it's a practice, okay? And so there's a number of central ideas, intentionality, attention, and attitudes. So we hold this in our awareness. The intention is to be with the present moment, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, and to be, when it drifts away or gets pulled, that we bring it back. We're not trying to fix anything, or we're not trying to like transform ourselves. We're just being with our experience. And that's the intention. So then our attention, we're training it. We're actually training our attention to hold it, to shift it, and to place it somewhere. So we practice that over and over. We start noticing our distractions and get curious about those distractions. And we start actually paying attention to our sensations in our body, our thoughts as sensations, our environment, what kind of sounds do we hear? What are our emotions? Those are the things that we choose to place our attention on. And our attention, we practice getting it really focused and concentrated, but then also a little bit more broad and receptive attention. And we're going to play with our attention in that way today for a couple different practices. And then attitude, we actually train our attitudes. We train our intention, we train our attention, and we train our attitudes. This attitude of like curiosity, of openness, of non-judgmental approach to our experience. And many of us may notice that we have a pretty harsh inner critic. It's pretty common. And so with mindfulness, for example, we start actually catching how our inner world, how our inner landscape is, and what kind of self-talk we have, how to meet our moments with a little bit more openness and kindness and curiosity. So in our mindfulness practices, we're actually training all those components of our experience. Okay, so one of the ways that we can actually practice mindfulness is through movement. This is a little bit more of an informal practice method, but the intention here is to bring your attention to the body in motion. So that is what we're attending to. When we notice that our attention slipped or got pulled into thought, the invitation is to notice it and then come back to the sensation that you're feeling. And even the absence of sensation, seeing if you can get curious about when your body's in motion, what is happening? What can you feel? Is it the air against the skin? Is it the muscle engaged? And we're just gonna, as an object of attention, we're just gonna keep bringing our attention back. And so I'm gonna actually stop sharing my screen for a moment. And I just realized my head's a little bit cut off, so I will, oh, I have to go up here to do this. Not really, but okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to invite everybody. We're just going to stay seated for those of you who actually want to get up and who have been sitting all day, and I invite you to do that. And you're just going to, for those of you sitting, make sure that your feet are securely on the ground. So if your seat is deep and you don't find yourself on the ground, I invite you to actually scoot your bottom to the end of the chair so you can have feet flat on the ground. And first off, you can just check in again with the body. Notice the points of contact you have with the chair and the floor. Checking in with the temperature of your body. Is there coolness in the hands, heat? Just noticing. And then bringing your arms up in the air, palms facing each other, hands towards the ceiling. Just holding your hands up in the air And the first thing we're going to do is actually do a reaching practice. So you're going to take the right hand and reach up almost like you're picking a piece of fruit, and then coming back down to neutral, arms still in the air. And then taking your left hand and reaching up and coming back down. One more time on each side, reaching up. Feeling the body in motion. And then left hand. Now you're coming back to a neutral position, palms facing each other, up in the air. And you're going to, if your neck's healthy, look up, then reach all the way up, stretching from the waist. Noticing where the stretch ends and where it begins. What part of the arms, the waist, the torso can you feel engaged? Is it a sharp, tense contraction? Is it a pulsing? Can you feel the blood rushing from your fingertips down the arms? And then on the out breath, we're going to go into a little bit of a twist. And so we're going to let our arms fall to our left. And if you have an armchair, putting your hands on the arm of the chair. And if not, just placing your hands on your lap. But the invitation is just to slightly turn to the left, twisting from the waist, and not trying to force anything. The intention isn't to actually get into a perfect pose or shape. It's really to find your own edge. Noticing where you start to feel that stretch. What does it feel like? Again, this is training our attention to be with our experience. Where do you feel the pulling? Where do you feel heavy? What's happening as you twist your torso? Is there a tightening in the hips or something else? And then on the next out breath, coming to arms in the air. Again, looking up towards the ceiling. Reach, reach, reach. And then on the next out breath, shifting over to the right. For those of you just watching us, sometimes actually just imagining your body in motion can generate similar sensations in the body. So I invite you to even practice that. Noticing your breath. Noticing any part that you feel like you're maybe tightening that's not necessary. See if you can soften that body part. I just noticed my hip was tightening. And on the out breath, I released it. Coming back on the out breath to arms in the air, palms facing each other towards the ceiling, looking up and stretching as high as you can. And on the next out breath, letting your arms drop. Just letting them fall. Noticing if your thoughts are wanting something more active or having a commentary about your own movement. Just observing what's showing up in the mind right now. There's no right or wrong. Just getting curious of what happens when you set the intention to be here and now and observe your experience. Noticing if there's any temperature change from that brief movement. Is there a pulsing or a tingling in the body? Getting really curious of what body parts are asking for your attention. Now I'm going to invite you to bring your arms up in the air one more time. And again, noticing your own limits. If your hands can only go this far, that's how far you take them. If they can go all the way up, you take them all the way up. And as you bring your arms in the air, just noticing if your shoulders are up by your ears. I invite you to let the shoulders drop while still reaching towards the ceiling. And then letting the left arm fall down, putting it either on the arm of your chair or on your lap. And on the out breath, curving over to the left. So right arm is coming over the head. Checking in that your neck is not crunched, but in a line with the body as best you can. Finding any part that's pinching or tight and just letting go a little bit, softening, decreasing the stretch to the point where you can actually feel the stretch without pain. And on the out breath, coming to an upright position and letting that right arm come down. See if you can even get a sense of it moving through the air. And actually just checking in from noticing what the right side of the body, the arm that you had up, notice if there's any difference between the left side. Can be one side feels heavier, one side feels more open, more space, or there could be nothing, but the invitation is just to explore. And then bringing the left arm up towards the ceiling, up high, reaching. And on the out breath, curving over to the right. And in this shape, the invitation is to let your hips get heavy. So they're not peeling off the chair, but they're weighted into the seated place you're in, and you're lifting from the hips up and over. Noticing where your attention is now. And as best you can, bringing it back to the body, the sensations you're feeling. Trying to get really specific around language. That's a sharp pain, that's a stretch that feels good here or there. There's a little bit of shaking in this body part. Or just noticing the difficulty with making contact with sensation, or noticing the numbness. Coming back to upright and letting that left arm fall down. Now observing between the left side and the right side. And then bringing the right arm across the chest and bringing the left arm in to pull it towards you. Stretching of the arms and the shoulder. Noticing where you feel sensation. Noticing where your attention's getting pulled, what's distracting you from being in the present moment. Without judgment, just noticing. And then letting go of that right arm, bringing it down. Again, just observing what letting go of that stretch feels like. And then bringing the left arm over the chest and cradling it in the right elbow, pulling it towards you. And then releasing. And this last movement is free flow. So checking in with your body and just seeing if there's any movement that is you're asking your body to make, anywhere that would benefit from a stretch. And I'm noticing my forearms are quite tight, so I'm going to actually just bring my hand towards my palm and push my fingers towards my face. Some of you might stand up and just give yourself a little shake. And then pushing my palm towards almost like zombie arms. And whatever you do to one side, as best you can, do it to the next side. And coming back, if you stepped up, coming back and just actually taking a moment to take in the entirety of your body. Notice what, if anything's different, as you slow down to observe your body and be with it. And I'm going to share my screen again. So that was mindful movement. And I invite you just to think, how is that similar or different? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Similar or different than how you typically pay attention. Oh, and I just want to make sure. Yeah, I think. So how do you typically pay attention to your body? How's that different? How could this way of paying attention to your body be helpful with reducing stress and increasing your well-being? So part of the reason we do a mindfulness practice like that is it promotes re-embodiment in the everyday. So when you pay attention to your body in movement, it actually reconnects you with your body in motion. And sometimes this is more accessible than sitting, especially when we have high anxiety or we're feeling restless. So mindfulness doesn't always have to be in a seated practice, right? That we can use it in motion. It builds our attention. So our attention's like a muscle. For those of you who have ever tried to do a chin up or do chin ups, we know that it takes some practice with which muscles to engage, and then we actually hone those muscles and strengthen them. This is a practice, this mindful, actually, the more and more times we bring it back to the present moment, it builds that muscle of coming back. And again, there's formal and informal practices, and this is a more informal practice with movement. And it also encourages self-care. So, you know, noticing if you check in with your body, I haven't drank anything today. Wow, my mouth is really dry, or my shoulders are really tight. You know, and I know in the very high-paced life that can commonly be involved in your shifts, it can be really hard to attend to the body and all the needs it has when there's, you know, life-threatening incidents that you're attending to. But small check-ins can go a long way. And again, don't believe me, this is just my experience, but I really invite you to put this into practice and see what, if anything, are the benefits for yourself. So there's so many misdemeanors about mindfulness. I thought I would take a moment and just speak to them. So mindfulness is not meditation per se. As I mentioned, there's informal ways of doing it. The formal way that we meditate can actually help strengthen our mindfulness. So like anything, you know, we practice things so we can do them in real life, right? We practice a sport and so we can do it. We practice things so we can integrate it into life. So meditation is one way that we can practice mindfulness. But we can do it walking, sitting, lying, swimming, standing. You know, there's no restrictions around it. It's not a relaxation technique, but when we are honing in on one thing at a time, typically the rest of the world starts to fall away. We're not bringing in the future or the past. We're actually just attending to one thing in the moment. And typically that actually helps us relax. So, and even fall asleep, some people, you know, when they're actually honing in on one thing, because we don't typically give ourselves a lot of rest without distractions or rest without going to sleep. So this is like rest, but with more of an internal focus. It's different than Netflix and chill, you know, a little bit different. So it's not trying to fix things. It's rather more being open to our experience, whether, you know, we're bringing our curiosity and we're taking a little bit of a distance. We're observing what's happening so we can respond and make a choice that fits us best. We're not trying to stop thoughts. A lot of people think I suck at this mindfulness stuff. I can't stop my thoughts. It's not the intention, actually. Thoughts will come and go. They're in the background, but we're choosing to center our attention on something, whether it's our breath or whether it's sound, or there's other various things. So we're not actually, when we're practicing mindfulness, we're not trying to stop our thoughts. We're more observing them and choosing which ones to follow. And it's not a religion per se, but a lot of the mindfulness actually has its roots and origins in many wisdom traditions, from ceremonies with indigenous cultures to its influence from the Eastern world and various religious traditions. and actually how it came to the West. There's a guy named John Kabat-Zinn, and he's on the screen. He's like this guy over to the left here, this white guy in the middle here. He is a biochemist or biomedical scientist. And in the 70s, he went to India and was working alongside some monks, or studying rather, and was with the Vipassana tradition, insight meditation, and thought to himself, he worked with pain patients at a pain clinic at the University of Massachusetts. And he thought, like, this could actually really be helpful for a lot of my patients. So he brought back some of the techniques and started this thing called the most commonly known in the West mindfulness-based modality, and it's mindfulness-based stress reduction. And he worked with individuals who were suffering from pain and began to realize that, like, they were really like helpful for both healthy and unhealthy people. So there's like treatments that have developed. A lot of them are group-based. So the mindfulness-based stress reduction is an 8-week group, and it has, they're 2.5 hours each week. And the most common ones are mindfulness-based stress reduction and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is used for relapse prevention with depression and anxiety. And so the rest of the modalities or groups that are listed below have also been adapted and worked to various communities, including healthcare. There's a program called Mindfulness for Healthcare Professionals, which I'll get to. There was a study done on it with EMS, I think in 2019. So, yeah, mindfulness, I was going to also mention that it's really spread across disciplines in terms of it's in education, it's with sports, and it's in the corporate settings. And as I'll get to, the research suggests there's many benefits. And so one of the next questions is like, why be in the present moment? You know, so many of the times we're here, our bodies are here, but our attention's traveling. And really, why be in the present moment? This is where life begins. The past's already gone. The future hasn't happened, you know? The present allows us to actually have a different relationship with our experience, including difficulty. We're not trying to get rid of difficulties, but we're beginning to actually turn towards them and not avoid them, right? A lot of times we just avoid because they're too difficult. But when we actually turn towards them, we might choose to respond in a different way, and our relationship can change. We actually get a little bit of distance. So instead of like, I'm anxious, it's like my heartbeat is increasing, my temperature is increasing, my thoughts are this, my emotions are this. We start actually, it's called decentering. It's getting some space and observing what's happening instead of being completely enmeshed and like controlled by it. So that's one of the things that research is showing to be the most helpful, is this decentering practice. And what also helps is when we turn towards our experience, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, we start to notice an actual, the range of our emotions, whether it's joy or pain, and we build a tolerance for it. If we continue to avoid a feeling that's really difficult, our tolerance for it is very low, you know, and when we actually are able to sit with the discomfort and observe it without being controlled by it, we get a little bit more tolerance and capacity of navigating it. So I'm going to actually show a quick video. It's only 2 minutes. It's by a man named Dan Harris, who wrote 10% Happier, and hopefully it just works. Oops. That's not what was supposed to happen. Wow, okay. Hold up. There we go.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be.
I'm just going to pause this because I have a feeling that I might be sharing my wrong screen. Nope, sharing my right screen. Okay. Continue on. Here we go.
Just as an example, driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you. And now all of us do it. And if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower and one that is accessible by you immediately.
Okay. Okay. So all this, speaking of mindfulness, I'm actually going to invite us to go into a practice. And this practice is a focused attention practice. So the intention is actually just to place your attention on the chosen point of focus. And if at any point there is some discomfort or overwhelm that people experience, the invitation is to stop this practice and do what best supports you. So while mindfulness is can be very helpful for those who are experiencing a high level of anxiety, for those people who are in the midst of something that's traumatic and navigating it, it can be not always as helpful. So while we do want to turn towards our difficulty, we also want to use mindfulness in a way that actually supports us, not makes it harder. And so the best way to figure that out is to just actually practice and notice. Again, a little bit of discomfort is invited. We want to build our tolerance and experience with it, but we don't want to put ourselves in a state of overwhelm. So I'm actually going to stop sharing, and I'm just going to invite you to get comfortable. And I'm going to set my clock so we have about a small amount of time to put this into practice. And I'll invite you to either drop your gaze, just soften the muscles around the eyes, or to close your eyes if that's available. And I'm going to close my eyes because I like to lead from my own personal experience. And so those of you who feel comfortable, I invite you to join me. First things first, it's just actually observing where your attention is. Bringing it in, seeing if you can just notice the points of contact you have with the chair or the furniture that you're on. Perhaps you feel the weight of your body in contact with the firmness or the softness of the cushion you're on, the seat. Perhaps you feel your feet in contact with the floor. And then bringing your attention to your belly and see if you can meet your next in-breath with a soft and relaxed belly as best you can. Then checking in with your shoulders, letting your shoulders drop, letting your bottom teeth fall away from your top teeth, softening the tongue and the mouth, and checking in with the muscles around the eyes and the brow. If there's any tightening or holding, using your next exhale, seeing if you can soften the muscles of the face. And one thing that some people find helpful to understand around the posture that can help is strong back. So really breathing into the vertebrae, the spine, sensing into the strength of it, and then softening the front. Now, turning your attention to your breath, not manipulating it or enhancing or changing the breath, but actually just turning your attention towards this naturally occurring process. And anchoring your attention where you feel your breath the easiest. Perhaps you feel your breath easiest at the level of the nose. As you breathe in, you may feel the coolness of the air move past the nostrils. Maybe you even feel the air hit the back of the throat on the inhale. And on the exhale, perhaps you feel the warmth of the air go past your upper lip. Maybe you feel your breath easiest at the level of the chest. As you breathe in, you might get a sense of the lungs expanding. Slight rise of the shoulders on the inhale. A slight fall of the shoulders on the exhale. Perhaps you feel your breath easiest at the level of the belly. As you breathe in, you may feel your belly expand. Maybe you even feel, if you're wearing pants, the waistband fabric against your skin on the inhale. And the releasing of air and softening, falling of the belly on the exhale. So choosing the belly, the chest, or the nose, or somewhere else in the body that you actually feel your breath. And for the remainder of this practice, the invitation is to anchor your attention to your breath. Just noticing one full inhale and one full exhale. Not just thinking about the breath, but actually feeling the breath, feeling the air from around you move in, and the air from inside of you move out. Noticing where your attention is now. If you notice it's getting pulled into thought, sound, potentially an ache in the body, just labeling where your attention's gone, noticing your distraction, and without judgment, as best you can, kindly escort your attention back to where you feel your breath the easiest. And if you notice that your thoughts are quite busy and really distracting or loud and hard to observe your breath, the invitation is to label your in-breath and out-breath. You can either use the word in silently to yourself, so it gives your mind something to do while you're focusing your attention on the sensations of breath. So in on the inhale and out on the exhale, or numbering the thoughts. And if you notice that you need to move or you have an itch, just observing that distraction or that itch, for example, pulling your attention away, getting curious about the shape of the itch, where it begins and where it ends. I invite you to even see if you can scratch it in your mind. And if you choose to move because your position needs some adjustment or you need to scratch that itch, just be very conscious of doing it and then coming back to the practice. Attending to the breath, not just thinking about the in and out, but actually feeling that air from around you move in on the inhale, feeling the body parts that rise on the inhale and fall on the exhale. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. I'm breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Noticing where your attention is now. And again, you know what to do, where if your attention's been pulled away, just gently bring it back. Perhaps you're noticing thoughts of when is this going to be done, or this is boring, or there resistance, or I hope this doesn't end, I'm enjoying this. Just observing thoughts as information, choosing which one to follow, knowing that you have choice. And then, knowing that right now you're attending to your breath. So unhooking your attention from thoughts and bringing it back to breath as best you can. Before we close, the invitation is to actually just offer that breath a little bit of gratitude for this life-giving rhythm that is with us on the regular, a place that we can always turn towards, a place that actually helps us know how we're doing, how our emotional state is, right? Sort of a thermometer when we're shallow breathing, when we're holding our breath and not aware of it. That can be information for us around how we're actually doing emotionally. So the next out breath, letting go of this brief practice. And if your eyes are closed, gently letting light in. And actually taking a quick look around the room before you come back to the screen. Okay, go back to sharing my screen. Okay. So in that practice, what we were doing is we were actually training our attention, and we were using the breath as that chosen point of focus. So step one, we focus on something that's happening right now. Step two, we will, after a few minutes or seconds, we'll become distracted and lose focus. This just happens. If you're a human, this is what happens, right? And then we realize we've been distracted. And then we name that distraction without judgment. And we gently bring our attention back to what we're focusing on. And by doing this process and observing where our distractions are, we actually become aware of things. We notice our trains of thoughts, our tension in the body and emotions. And without observing those actually have tremendous impact on how we feel. And we run the risk of being controlled by them if we're not observing them, if we're not noticing them. And by placing our attention on a single focus over and over, we start to notice when it's drifted. We start to notice when it's like spilling into the future or leaning into the future or getting pulled into the past. So this is the process over and over. We have so much, it takes so much time to build an actual habit. So this is a habit of mind that we can train, and choosing one point of focus is the start of that training. So looking at what the actual research says. So this is one of the largest studies to date, and it was done in 2015, and it is a meta-analysis of reviews that were done that looked at mindfulness-based stress reduction and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And what it showed is that there was evidence. So these are 2 8-week programs, and they compared those against a wait list and treatment as usual. And what they found is that symptoms of anxiety and depression and quality of life, like the symptoms of anxiety and depression decreased, and the perceived stress decreased, the quality of life increased, and physical function increased. So what they realized with these studies is that mindfulness-based therapies can actually work to help like mental health, and actually in prevention as well. And the evidence is still growing. Like we really do need more research around mindfulness to see, its dosage, its contraindications, what type of meditation and for how long does it need to be practiced for people to experience these symptoms. As I said, these were done on 8-week programs, 2.5 hours each week, with the invitation to do homework at least 40 minutes a day in between sessions. So I would say that we need like longer follow-up of post-interventions to see, 6 months, 2 years down the way, how helpful is it? And we also need more randomized controlled trials. I did find one study that looked at working with mindfulness in emergency medical technicians, and it was an 8-week group for medical health professionals. And after the intervention, there was statistically significant increases in compassion satisfaction, in trait mindfulness, and a decrease in burnout compared to the beginning of the program. And these changes were actually sustained 6 months post completion of the program. There wasn't very significant changes over time with secondary trauma or perceived stress, but this is one study that I believe had 10 people in it. So it's a very small sample size, but it is helpful to see that some people have benefited from it in this line of work. Okay, how am I doing for time? Oh, we gotta get going. Okay. So what can happen when we meditate? Really what happens here is that there's structural and functional changes to the brain and the network areas of the brain related to attention and emotional regulation. When we meditate, we actually get very into the being mode. So we experience it. It's a sunny day. It's a sunny day in June is like a narrative, right? But the experience is it's warm temp. I can feel the warmth on my skin. I can see the light on the trees. I can feel the warmth in my armpits. And we're experience it moment by moment instead of just in our narrative. And actually that can have tremendous impact on the way that we move through the world and how we navigate stress. It actually helps us prevent the cascade of thinking that can come sometimes with anxiety and depression, because we start to notice the experience instead of getting caught up in the narrative. Every time I have this low mood, I can't get out of bed for 3 days and blah, blah, blah. You know, we can let those narratives really control our experience instead of really checking in with our direct experience. So, how can you introduce mindfulness to your day-to-day? One of the things that we did at the very beginning of the workshop was look at that stop practice. And I've heard some people say, every time I see a stop sign, I just remember to check in with myself. Working with some doctors at the Faculty of Mindfulness, one of the things that they said, every time they go through a door entrance, they check in with themselves, do a quick, like, how am I feeling? You know, thoughts, emotions, sensations in the body. Also doing something mindful to help transitions before a shift, after a shift. Something like we can do mindful eating, just enjoying a morning warm beverage, smelling it, tasting it, using our senses. Mindfulness is about not just privileging thought, but actually taking in the experience from using our senses to take it in, you know, and actually that can help us observe the joy and the beauty that this world has to offer instead of getting focused on this negativity that we have a bias towards as humans. So I know we are running out of time, so I'm going to go our closing reminders. Whenever possible, do one thing at a time. Pay full attention to what you're doing. And when the mind wanders, bring it back 3 billion times. That's what you're going to have to do. And investigate your distractions. There's lots of apps available. Some of them have free options to explore mindfulness as practices. They have guided practices and information. I've also created a list of some resources. If any of you are interested in taking an 8-week course, the Center for Mindfulness Studies has online programs, and they're covered by third-party insurance, typically, because they're delivered by healthcare professionals. And if anybody's in the Regina community, there's also a Regina Community Mindfulness Group there and some other links. And then I would actually like you to just take a moment and type into the chat a response to one or all 3 statements. So one thing that you learned today, one thing that you felt, and something that you will take with you. So just, you know, you can label them 1, 2, or 3, or just write down, put into the chat, whatever you'd like. It'd be great to hear what people thought, experienced in this workshop. I also provided, as I suggested, I will give the slide deck, and it has the references as well at the end of it. So I am going to stop share. I think there's some chat. And I think we're probably almost out of time for questions, but I have a couple. On slide 14, our past reflection. Actually, let me just check in. Jackie, are we out of time? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, and because I see there's only 1 question there. So yeah, for sure, answer that.
Slide 14 are present reflections on the decisions of our future decisions. Therefore, where is our present? Our present can only be a split moment in time. Yes, nearly insignificant. How do I find that moment and take advantage of it? Yeah, that's actually a really good question. It's so fleeting. This moment's gone, but it's about turning our attention to our experience. And that's an individual thing. So noticing if our thoughts are part of what that moment is, but it's about having choice about where our attention is. And so there's some more information in our chats. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me. As I suggested, I'll send the slides and my email address. Thank you very much for your time and your presence.
Thank you so much, Christine. Kyle, I didn't know if you, sorry, I should have asked you if you'd like to say anything. No? Okay.
All good. No.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Christine. Personally, I know I feel like I feel a lot more relaxed. It's awesome. And I have been trying to embed mindfulness in my day-to-day activity, just because if you don't make it a habit, it's difficult to jump in. So I really appreciate the information and walking us through the practice. I'm going to now turn to our next and final speaker for the day, Big Daddy Taz. So after 30 years of denying he had mental illness, Taz decided that being a bipolar, socially anxious, obsessive-compulsive dyslexic could either ruin or enhance his life. His choice to embrace his mental illness has led him to such TV appearances as Just for Laughs, Comedy Now, and CBC Winnipeg Comedy Festival. He once shattered the world's record for the longest continuous stand-up comedy routine at 8.5 hours. He's only doing 30 minutes today, but none of this means anything unless he's funny today. So please welcome Big Daddy Taz. Over to you, buddy.
Oh, hey, how are you? Good to see you. If I can be a little different than all the other speakers, if I can get everybody to turn their cameras on and their microphones on for me that are here, because as a speaker and a comedian, I can't function without seeing faces, smiles, and hearing that. So, Kyle, there you go, buddy. I thought as soon as you saw me, you shut off your camera, buddy. I didn't know what was going on. That guy look at that fella. And I've got hey, Colette and Jen and Tussin and everybody. Christine, thank you so much for your presentation. I was so incredibly relaxed, and I was listening to it, and then I got so into the moment that I actually forgot to go upstairs and change into my stage gear. So I'm just into this. So this is what you get. This is the picking my son up at school because I still think I'm cool wearing a hat and a purple shirt thing. It's awesome. Thank you very much for letting me be a part of the day. It's fantastic. I've already learned some stuff from Christine and Colette and everybody. And the the one thing I need to tell you right now is that for no apparent reason, pardon me, I'm having an anxiety attack, a complete full-blown anxiety attack. Look at my, I mean, sweating. I'm just waiting for a bead of sweat to roll down the crack of my arse here. Like, it's just bizarre. I've been looking forward to this for a few days to come and talk to you, and it's I've only got 30 minutes. I think the problem is I've only got 30 minutes. It takes me 45 minutes to say hello. Right. And part of that is my ADD. I do, by the way, have ADD, attention deficit disorder. I can't just say ADD anymore because during a TV. Hey, Christine, guess what I just did there? My thought was racing, and I took your advice and I took a breath for a second, and then I just was like, blah, blah, and I just went, I do have ADD. I just slowed everything down. I can't just say ADD anymore without saying attention deficit disorder, because during a TV taping a number of years ago, a lady yelled out, "That's an alarm system." What? ADD is an alarm system. I said, "No, that's ADT." She goes, "What's the difference?" Huge. You don't want attention deficit disorder alarms. Let me tell you that straight out, right? There's somebody in my house who's got a knife. I got a blue bike. My dog's name is Kevin. Bye. What's going on? I don't understand what's going on. Oh man, the and COVID has I mean, it's so, as you all know, of course, being in the field that you're in, it has changed the world as we see it, and some people are dealing with it really well, and other people are me. and not doing very well. You know, full disclosure, lost our house, and well, we didn't lose it. We didn't just like walk away and go, hey, does anybody seen our house anywhere? It's where it was. I swear it was right here. It's in numerical order. It should be here. But and it threw me into a huge depression. And people are trying to help, like, and I love people that try to help, but sometimes, you know, wait to be asked sometimes to be awesome, right? They're all like, oh, what did you do with COVID? You've had a whole year. What did you do? I can't believe we made a penguin out of Oreo cookies, and I taught my kids Swahili, and it's just awesome. And now we can talk Klingon together, and it's just I'm like, what did you do? I said, I grew this beard. That's all I did. That's the only thing I've done in a year, because it's the only thing I could function. I grew a beard, and now I look like if Fred Penner collected money for the Irish mob. That's what I look like right there. I almost made Jackie spit coffee out of her mouth. That's awesome. Oh man, and my anxiety is through the roof today as well. I have no idea why I'm having it. I try not to focus on it too much, because it's just happening. I just let it happen, and I'll use the tools that I have after we're done here. One of them is making people laugh, so hopefully this works. And if I don't feel better, it's actually all your fault. To be honest with you, that's just going to let you know straight out, it's your fault. But my sons and I were just having a quick conversation about anxiety last night. And my oldest one, I've got two boys, by the way. I have a 13-year-old and a 26-year-old, because I'm really good at relationships. And my oldest one says, Dad, how do you deal with the anxiety? Sometimes it's crippling. I said, you know what? I just say it can always be worse. He says, I hate it when you say that. I said, we're not inviting it to be all be worse. But if you say it can always be worse, then all of a sudden your brain goes, okay, well, this isn't the worst it can be, and I can handle that, right? It makes it, you have to build a much shorter ladder if you already say, oh, it's not as bad as it can be. And my oldest one goes, Dad, that doesn't ring true to me. And my youngest one, Wee Beast, he says, I get it, Daddy. And nothing makes me feel better, by the way, than having a 13-year-old and a 26-year-old still call you Daddy. I love that. I love that quite a bit. And so my oldest one says to my youngest one, no, you don't get it. You're just trying to win points with Daddy-O. And my youngest one goes, no, if you say it can always be worse, it fools your brain. So my oldest one goes, listen, what if you're outside and it's minus 55 degrees Celsius and you're wearing nothing but your underwear, and not the good underwear you were supposed to keep, but the stuff you're supposed to throw away, but it's still more comfortable, and you're wearing that. And a professional soccer player wearing a frozen steel-toed boot comes and kicks her right in the wiener, he says. How can it be worse than that? And without even skipping a beat, my youngest one looks at my oldest one in the eyes and goes, is there a nail in the boot? They get it. We share our struggles and our triumphs and our tribulations with mental health, and I'm very open about it. Like Jackie was saying, they were listing off my laundry list of my mental illness, and you know, you said socially anxious. The last speaker yesterday said socially obnoxious, and I went, yeah, pretty close too. Not gonna lie to you, I am, because I'll talk about it. And my OCD, oh my gosh, here's what I found out. This doesn't matter to anybody over there, but the OCD, the Obsessive Compulsive Disorders Association of Manitoba, isn't open regular hours. Okay, so that's annoying, incredibly annoying. You sure you're not you're not the Procrastination Society opening whenever you want? That's all I'm thinking, right? And been seeing my psychiatrist quite a bit. I made my psychiatrist laugh really hard, which I love doing, by the way. It's you know what, it's one of the things about COVID. The only sort of silver lining to COVID is that now everybody's going to understand what mental health, how important mental health is, right? I don't think there's anybody on this planet. You know, what I do hate is, well, we're all in the same boat. No, we're not all in the same boat. You have a yacht. I have 3 people trying to get into this kayak, and your job is, if you have a yacht, is to help the people with the kayaks. That's what we're supposed to do. We're all in the same water system-ish, right? That's it. That's like saying we're all in the same boat, but this is my island. Well, that's an island then, isn't it? You've got your own little thing to deal with, and I've got my own little thing to deal with too, which is not to try to call you an asshole. Whoop, sorry, I'm not supposed to swear. But you want to hear something funny? I almost got something by CBC because they wanted me to do all these frequently asked questions about COVID and have funny answers. So I said, yeah, we'll call it this. We'll call it FAQ COVID. So I had that. Now, if you send that out, You just sound it out. There you go. My views not reflect those who hired me in any way here, by the way. This is just me talking away on myself. So my psychiatrist actually phones me now. He phones me, and you can't avoid a phone meeting with your psychiatrist, right? You can't. Yeah, I'm not here right now. Tess, it's FaceTime. Oh, hi. That was my ear. So he said to me, it's okay to be depressed. It's okay to, to pine and mourn for what is happening in your life right now. He says, but why don't you try to focus, Tazzy, focus on the things that COVID has given you instead of taking away. I said, okay. And he goes, okay, what are those? Name 3 things that COVID has given you. I said, crushing debt, anxiety, and depression. Can we focus on those? That's what we need to do right now. But it's also given me a higher sense of self. There are days where I would just sit on the couch and cry because I knew we were selling our house and we were selling my collections of stuff, and we were selling things because in about 2 weeks I lost 2 years worth of work, and that was it. And I can't tell you, I said this earlier, for those of you that weren't at the get together earlier, I told Jackie and Colette and the crew here that I was so depressed, and then all of a sudden it was just something as simple as getting an email from you folks to say, hey, we'd love for you to perform. And I'm like, awesome, right? Because that's all I want to do. I mean, I miss performing. I miss performing for kids. One little boy looks at me the other day and he goes online and he says, I like your hat. I said, oh, thank you very much. He goes, the rest of you is okay too. No filters, right? The kids have no filters, right? And here's, by the way, you know how hard it is to have attention deficit disorder and then have a whole bunch of squares, like we're on the Brady Bunch meets Hollywood Squares, and then have to only do 35 minutes. And so I'm looking at you, I'm looking for smiles, looking at the time, looking at you, looking at smiles. I'm trying to be in the moment, but that moment is fleeting. I need more moments if I could next time. It'd be awesome. But and my wife is Miss Christie is totally on board with she understands my mental health struggles and things like that, and they're trying to get me out and do more walking and things like that. But a couple of weeks ago it was like minus a mazillion here in Winnipeg. It was very, very cold, and my psychiatrist goes, go walking. I said, it's like minus 50 with a wind chill. He goes, wear a toque. I'm like, that's it? What do you think got me? I'll get pretty. That's it. I'll be right into the psych ward, right? Only wearing a toque. And I said, because my wife, Miss Christie, she makes me toques, and my head, look at my arms to a point. It really does. So I pulled these toques right down over. I got this so much. I jam it down on my face like that. It works its way up. In about 10 minutes out, I look like a badly knit condom. I just look like a giant badly knit condom. It's just ridiculous, right? And but a couple months ago, I had there's a few life-changing moments in your life that you get, and I think you should hold that in your heart. And I think that's important too. You see, we're so rude to ourselves, and Christine had said, we talk to ourselves in a way that we would never talk to others. We are so mean to ourselves, right? The only time we're not mean to ourselves is if we stub our toe on the couch, and then it's obviously the couch's fault, right? But we should be trying to help ourselves out. Look at little children. When was the last time you came out of a bathroom and went, I pooped, right? And that's what, that's I pooped, and they're so proud of themselves. Our brain should be feeding us that lovely heartfelt love for ourselves, the self-adulation, and the wonderful stuff. It should be like when I'm having an anxiety attack, I should be like, oh, remember when you got that standing ovation? Hey, remember when the kids said you helped them? Hey, do you remember the smiles? Do you remember the laughs and stuff like that? And my brain wants to do that, but instead my brain goes, hey, remember that time? You remember the time? That little gremlin that lives inside you takes over. Remember the time you pooped yourself in public? Do you remember that time? Do you remember that? You remember that? I remember what you did there. I remember in 1975. I remember this. Did you remember that? And it fills our head with all this negative stuff. And I try very hard. To let it accept that, yes, I've had negative stuff in my life. And yes, some of it was my fault. And yes, a lot of it is listening to other people's assessment of who I am. And then just letting that out, that's it. But this one particular time I couldn't. It was tying me down. I was gullivering myself to the couch. I couldn't get up. I was there and I'm crying and I'm weeping, and my youngest son comes up and says to me, Daddy, what's going on? And I told him, I said, I feel bad, we have to move. I feel bad, we got to go to a different, I feel bad, I feel bad, I feel responsible bad. And he takes me by my ears and he holds me like this and he goes, Daddy, you realize this is happening to you, but not because of you, right? Out of the words of babes, right? That's all I needed to hear. But my brain wouldn't let me focus on that, because I was pining for stuff that I was pining for stuff that I was losing in the stuff that I had in the past and the stuff I might not have in the future, instead of sitting here realizing, oh, I got a family that loves me. I got people that love me. I love me. See, mindfulness is incredibly important, and anxiety is a thief, right? It steals your ability to think that everything's going to be okay. And depression's a liar. Depression lies to you and says nobody loves you and you shouldn't love yourself because you're a piece of crap. But you know what mindfulness tells you? This moment, you're having this thought and it's yours. Now, how you react to that is how your day is going to go. And so for weeks, I couldn't figure out what I was going to do. So now every morning I do this. Do this with me. Just close your eyes. I was going to go watch me. Close your eyes, but if you have to, it's one of the others. Close your eyes. Now wait for a second. Do you see that darkness that comes? Now smile, a big smile, big smile. Did you see the light that happened behind your eyes as soon as you smile? You see, the light is within you. You just have to find that light, and that's what we are to do. That's why Christine and I speak, is so that we can help you find your light. Because darkness is a terrifying place until you realize that it's not. You see, if you're living in darkness, and you know where the light is, it's okay. Darkness is peaceful, darkness is quiet, and darkness is adventurous. But when you think there's never going to be a light again, that's when your heart races and your arms sweat and you panic and you have these thoughts that aren't valid at all. And I've learned more from my children than I have from any was that obvious that I looked at the time? From any nurse and psychiatrist or anything. And by the way, here's how I've learned stuff. Children, nurses, and then way down the line, doctors. I'm just going to say it that way, because no offense to any doctors in the room, but maybe if you treated me like I was maybe on par mentally with you, I'd feel a lot better. That's all. My views do not reflect those of Saskatchewan College of Paramedics in any way. And they're like, don't call us EMTs. I'm like, sorry, I don't know what to call you. How about lifesavers? And if I had more time, and I'll have time next time, I'll tell you about how a couple of you saved my life when I was having heart attacks and after my suicide attempts and things like that. But instead, let me tell you how a 3-year-old changed my life. We love to play hide and go seek in our house. Well, let me put it this way. My son loves to play hide and go seek. I'm not very good at hide and go seek, right? I'm a good seeker. I'm not a good hider. I'm 270 pounds or so. I got to stop saying that because I lost like 35 pounds. But at the time I'm about 270 pounds, and to the point where even my nephews and nieces were teasing me about not being able to play hide and go seek, right? And they come in, they go, "Oh, Uncle Taz, why don't you try to hide and see how long it takes us to find you?" I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. You go in the backyard and you count to 100, and you come in and you try to find me. And if you can't find me in 45 minutes, then the 2 weeks that you're here, you have to do all the chores. I don't have to do any cooking. I don't have to do anything like that. I will help you with the hard stuff, but you take care of all the chores, everything, including washing the cars and things like that." Yeah, and they high-fiving each other, right? So they go and they count to 100, and they come in, and it was an hour and 25 minutes before they could find me because I went to the mall. So anyway, oh yeah, well, my wife was there. I didn't just leave them there by themselves. And the best part, Dawson, the best part is that when they ran in and they looked in the living room, and I just laid down and put a pillow on my head, and then they walked in and they go, "Oh my gosh, were you there the whole time?" Oh, yes, I was. And then they were trying to figure it out. Oh, maybe because we thought it was the couch and we didn't even look. And I'm like, yeah, that's the way it is. So I gotta tell you, so my son is 3 years old, likes to play hide and go seek. He would always hide in the closet. Why would he hide in the closet? Because he would go in the closet and jump out and scare me, and I would pretend to be scared, and he would laugh and laugh and laugh, and I would laugh and laugh. And there's no better sound in this world than a child's laughter. If you get depressed or anxious, Google babies laughing. Do that, and take your meds too. Like, take your meds. It's important to take your meds as well. Like clonazepam. Oh my gosh, the Pam family, any of the Pam family, invite them over every once in a while. It's about this big, right? It's about the size of an ant's nut. That's the pill. It's about this big, and you're like, oh, they're like, put it under your tongue. It's good for anxiety. And you're like, I don't, it's never gonna work. You put it on your tongue, and 3 seconds later, you're like, Puff the magic dragon lives by the sea. You take two and you're like, I see fields of green, red roses too. Is that a unicorn wearing my shoes in a canoe? I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, yeah. Because it's awesome, just to let you know, get you a little break from your own mind. But he didn't know, while he was over at my ma's house, over at his ma's house, that I had taken the door off the closet and replaced it with sliding, these folding bifold doors like that. I don't know if it makes sense there. And with the mirrors on the mirrors. Okay, Colette's nodding. I put my camera right in front of my face so I don't see myself, because I don't need to see me going, is that a booger? That's a hair. Is that a booger? Is that a hair? Is that a booger? Is that a hair? Now you're all going, I hope it's a hair. But and when the doors are open a little bit, they reflect off each other. So I guess when you're 3 years old, you don't know the difference, you don't know the laws of refraction and reflection. He must have been going 40. He picked up some good speed going down that hallway. And it sounded like 1 o'clock in England in my house. And he comes walking out. He's like, oh, Daddy, I didn't even see me coming. Well, that made me laugh, right? It made me laugh. Jen, I was laughing so hard. And I looked down and he's shaking like that. And I'm like, he's laughing too. This is awesome. The more he laughed, I started laughing. And then I realized, pardon me. And I realized that he wasn't laughing. He was crying. And I felt like a jerk. But I don't know if you all have ever had a situation where you're not supposed to be laughing and it made you laugh even harder. Oh, yeah. I got me some giggles. Oh, I couldn't stop. And then I had it almost under control. I actually had to practice a little quick meditation, jump out of my brain and start breathing there to get, I was all calmed down. I was ready to go. And I went to say something. And then Wee Beast said the most 97-year-old man thing I've ever heard in my entire life. He goes, you don't know my pain. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I started laughing harder. Now, I know I wasn't supposed to be laughing. And I look down at him and I start crying, and he looks at me and I look at him, and he stops. He goes, Daddy, why are you crying? I said, well, I feel terrible because you were crying. And he goes like this, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. I'll never forget, because I don't know what an epiphany is. I think it's a singer from the 80s. But I think we're alone now. Anybody under 50 is gonna have to Google me. But here's what I know. I know that the universe will give you signs that everything's going to be okay. Sometimes it's a massive, giant sign, and sometimes it's just a wee little tiny ember in the fire that you need to follow when you're camping so you can find your way back. But this was a sign that I needed. And I'll never forget this. I can right now, when he leaned forward and goes, Daddy, no, these tears down here, he goes, those are the sad tears. He goes, these ones coming out of my eyes now. He goes, those are the funny tears. And I'll never forget, as he wiped away his little thumb, I can still feel his little thumb. Well, I know this is my thumb, but I can still feel his little thumb underneath my eye, wiping away my tear. And he says, Daddy, because you know why we got to laugh? And I said, why? He goes, because nothing hurts as bad if you laugh about it. And I said, what? He goes, nothing hurts as bad or as scary if you laugh about it. It was the moment I decided to get help with my mental health, to become clean and sober, and to do what I needed to do to become me, to become a good daddy, and to become what has turned into what they call the bipolar Buddha, which is a teacher. and to let people know that just because I have labels, I am not those labels. And just because I have diagnosis doesn't mean that I will treat myself any different for having these diagnoses. And I will become a loud voice. And I did. And I've become an incredibly loud voice for those who are living in terror because of the stigma. You see, it's our jobs as human beings to help each other up, to be the light that we can be for ourselves. And when we can't be our light, to rely on others to be our light. And we have to be lights for others and to teach. I loved your presentation, Christine. I knew what mindfulness was, but I couldn't put the two and two together sometimes because my ADHD brain scrambles everything around. I was so peaceful. I was so peaceful until it was my turn. I just want peace and love for everybody. I want everybody to feel the compassion of their own heart. You see, we have to be able to stand up for ourselves and to ourselves, because we forget to stand up to ourselves. Oh, you're an idiot. No, you're not an idiot. You had a lapse. You had a lapse. Become aware of the sum of your whole, and don't look at each little negative, because if it's not the negatives that make you, it's the positives that make you. And that's the way it is. And look at all the times that you've helped people, and focus on that. And then you'll help yourself. And you know what? I looked at my son and I realized that I was blessed. And I am very blessed. I love what I do, and I've got a great wife. And my wife the other day, and we tease each other. Geez, I hope she's teasing. But we tease each other relentlessly. The other day she goes, "You're an idiot." And I said, "You knew that before you married me. So what does that make you?" Angry, by the way. Angry is the word for that. So, and I didn't realize, right? Because she has a furrow right here which she never had before she met me, by the way. She's got this little furrow right here. And that's a lot of times where she's like, I'm trying to figure out. But, oh, that's the alarm telling me I gotta wrap up. So, see, I set an alarm. I had to set an alarm because otherwise I'm not done. Don't clap yet. Oh geez, my brain went, what was it talking about? Ironically, ADD. Oh, okay. So my wife and I, right, I tease her. And so I go to the, and we love each other tremendously, right? We do. I mean, we love each other. There are times where we don't like to be in the same house as each other, but the last year has taught us that. And then when people say, "Oh, what's the one thing that you've done the most? Did you do a project as a family?" Yes. After 8 months of being together, my wife and I got together and we put a lock on the knife drawer. That's what we did. That's called self-preservation. Now, back to the story at hand. I go to my shop because that's my quiet place and I love there. I collect comic books, and I'm going through the comic books and I'm zoning out, and I realize, oh my God, I think I pissed Christy off. Miss Christy, I've pissed her off, right? So I don't want to send her "I love you" because she knows I love you. I don't want to send "I'm sorry" because I'm not sure what I'm sorry about. And if she says, "What are you sorry about?" I might pick something she hasn't thought about yet. So what I do write is this: "You make me want to be a better person. Thank you." Typey type, swim, off it goes. 2 seconds later, whoom. "Did you mean that?" "Oh, of course I meant that." Swing, swoom. "Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure. Every word meant it." Boom, swing. "Did you read it?" "Why would I read it? I wrote it." Boom, swing, read it. So I read it. I guess that I didn't press the K hard enough when I was typing. So instead of getting "You make me want to be a better person, thank you," she got "You make me want to be a better person than you." So yeah, thank goodness in Winnipeg right now, florists are essential because I bought her some awesome stuff to plant. And that's what I'm going to do. That's what we do. We plant the seeds that'll grow into beautiful flowers. Please let yourself be a beautiful flower. Please know that you are more loved than you'll ever know. And on behalf of every patient that has and that has been rude to you, or actually verbally abusive or physically abusive because they didn't know what they were doing, and please know that we love you and we thank you. From this patient who wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the paramedics that helped me out more times than I should have been, and more chances that I should have been given. And lots of love to all of you. And please take care of yourselves. And thank you so much for 2 reasons. Thank you so much for letting me be part of the day, because I like to make you laugh. And I'm going to have a little tear, but thank you for letting me feel that I've got purpose again. Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tazzy. So good. Thank you so much.
No worries. I never know what to do now. I usually just walk away, but last time I did, I had my microphone clipped in and the whole computer went. So I'm just going to hang up.
It's all
And
good. Thank you.
take care.
See ya. All right. On that note, I'm going to turn things back to Kyle and for your closing remarks, Kyle.
Thanks, Jackie, and all of our attendees. And I told you I'd bring May the 4th into this. So thank you to everybody for attending. Again, as I said on the onset, I hope that you gained some good information around what the college is doing and how we're working to better the profession, protect the public, and represent the work that you're doing. So in closing, just want to offer, be proud of the work that you're doing. Not just because it's a pandemic and you're vital to the efforts to get through this, but be proud of the work that you're doing because you are making a difference for the patients you serve, the peers that you work with, and the profession as a whole. What you do is important. Maybe you'll do more for the profession tomorrow than you did today, or maybe today you'll be making the bigger difference. Any day forward and any day in the past, you are making a difference. And help your fellow paramedic. Continue to represent the profession and help the public that calls on you and trusts in what you do for them for their health and safety. We wish you well on behalf of the council, the Jackie and all of the staff and team at the College of Paramedics. We look forward to seeing you again really soon, perhaps in person next year, you never know. And be well, stay safe, and continue on the good work. Jackie?
Thanks very much, everybody. I appreciate everybody's participation and contribution today. I wish you all the best, stay healthy, and we'll see you next year. Take care.